Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. This happened about 4 years ago, and now that my mom is no longer at her current job, I feel I can post about this incident. To give you some of a background, I live in a somewhat small town. My family has lived here for years. It is one of those towns where growing up I had to be on my best behavior because everyone knows everyone. One time I was picked up by some friends who were egging before picking me up, and by the time I got home, my mom had already had 3 phone calls from people telling on me that I was in the car that was egging. Everyone knows everyone, and everyone is related to everyone. My grandma was very involved in the community, and everyone calls her grandma. My mom is also very involved in the community, and I swear she knows everyone. She also was on the school board and president at the time of the event that I'm about to share. So back in 2020, my grandma was renting a house from a family who's also lived in the town forever. They're actually seen as slumlords in town. Their properties they rent out are not the best. However, considering our family history and their love for my grandma, they rented out one of their better, smaller houses to her. The house was a house. We had to do a lot to it on our dime before my grandma and my grandma's brother could move in. The house had old appliances, and the doors were the original in this 1950s house. So my grandma, 86 became ill, and it was hard for my mom, 59 to get her in and out of the house due to very wet conditions. My mom honestly was having a horrible time getting her to the car. My grandma also had fallen a few times as well. There was a swamp of black slimy mud between my grandma's yard and our only available parking constantly. My mom reached out to my grandma's landlord and asked if she would provide a sidewalk or some type of safe passage to the street. My mom was told that that was city property, and she was not allowed to do anything. So my mom reached out to the city, people who we had every reason to believe would care about the safety of my grandma, great-uncle, or any other senior citizen. The city said it was a landlord problem and she needed to put in a driveway. Just to add, a lot of the people who work for the city are people my family have known for years and have lived in the town for years themselves. My grandma babysat over half of them. When my mom kept getting the back and forth between city and landlord and had no luck appealing to the Public Works Committee, she finally told Bob, who is a head of Public Works, she would just take care of it herself. Bob is someone who has been in town for years and is actually distantly related to the landlord. At that point, the Mayor Chelsea ordered the city workers to set aside other projects that came from them and go to my grandma's property. Nothing was done to improve the situation. They spent the day putting in dirt, grass seed, straw, and huge boulders that made access to our only parking spot even more difficult. It was February, no grass was going to grow low. Also, the Mayor Chelsea is someone who we grew up with in town. She is someone who went to high school with my older cousins and is actually distantly related to my family. She was new as mayor and has kids in high school, and her husband owns a business in town. She used to actually be neighbors to my aunt. She is not the brightest bulb in the tanning bed. She also is the typical mean girl. When my mom got off of work the day they put the dirt and grass seed down, she called my grandma. She was crying. My grandma said that the city may as well have thrown dirt in her face because they only made the problem worse. My mom's next step was to attend the alderman meeting, provide pictures of our problem and the action taken, and ask who approved that expenditure and how did it address our problem. After being confronted publicly, the mayor said it was she who ordered the action. Then she stated that she would have the guys go look at it again. The only action taken upon their return was moving the boulder back so it wasn't so close to the street. At this point, the mayor came after my mom both personally and professionally. I feel the mayor honestly felt threatened by my mom. The mayor also wanted to show off and show she was going to put my mom in her place, I guess. My mom was constantly told she should run for mayor as well. My mom worked at a pharmacy in town. The mayor and her friend, who is our neighbor and my mom's old friend, I live next door to my parents, would call and complain about my mom. My mom said when they would come to the pharmacy to pick up their meds, she would be completely blank and just say what she needed to say and check them out. In the meantime, it was election time, and the mayor was up for re-election. The mayor was criticized a lot due to her lack of knowledge regarding codes, policies, and her having multiple conflicts of interest due to appointing her friends and family to committees. Also, she constantly put out posts on FBI with many grammatical and spelling errors. It was embarrassing for our town, to be honest. My mom helped her opponent campaign and helped him at the polls. The mayor then wrote some letter and sent it to everyone in town, creating a rumor saying my mom was drinking at the polls when voting was going on. Me and my dad laughed so hard at this one due to my mom having a total of like 5 drinks in her life. Also in the letter they wrote that my mom should not be the president of the school board, etc., due to this rumor. The harassment at her work got so bad that my mom's boss asked if something was going on due to the same women calling and complaining about her, and he thought it was odd because he did not see anything wrong with what she was doing, and my mom had never had a complaint before then, all of the sudden. These women were calling constantly. They were even calling the pharmacy's corporate offices. My mom was so upset about it they were ruining her reputation and talking smack around town, saying my mom and our family thought we would get special privileges from the city due to who we were. Our family finally fixed the problem ourselves. It required exactly $25 worth of gravel to create safe passage for my grandma. The aldermen were not aware because we really had our hands full trying to help my grandma get to an improved state of health and thought since we had contacted Public Works. We thought they would have been made aware through city communications. One alderman drove by while my cousin was shoveling gravel. When the alderman understood what was really being asked, he helped shovel the gravel and told my grandma he was sorry. Now, back to when they first moved in. They were granted a contingent occupancy permit due to repairs that needed to be made. It was a good thing because my grandma had been led to believe this property had already been approved and had relinquished her current apartment. However, in the 8 months she has lived there had not been one follow-up visit to make sure any of these repairs were done. So the landlord was not being forced to make repairs. There were so many repairs that needed done. For instance, repairing the back stairs that are the second way out in case of fire. Every time my mom would inquire about a follow-up visit, it was met with a threat to revoke the occupancy permit and make my ill grandma move and become homeless. We had not asked for nothing more than what my grandma and great-uncle are entitled to as tenants. We were just looking out for our family. The mayor turned this into a show of power between her and my mom. I do not know why the landlord is not being made to comply. But we really know why. It is because they are related to the people who are supposed to hold the landlords accountable. We followed proper channels. We did not ask for any personal favors. Only what should be in place for all tenants, which is making sure properties are repaired when a contingent occupancy permit is granted. As far as enforcing the rules, that should have all been handled by the city occupancy permit officer, code enforcement officer, and the landlord. We should never have had to even ask. The mayor Chelsea ended up winning the election again. We had members of Chelsea's family going up our street at 10:30 p.m. honking their horns and screaming, "We won, bitch." Our neighbor who had young children actually recorded it and posted it on FBI because they were upset because it had woken up their children. To this day, our family is harassed, and our family members are constantly getting citations for a little petty thing. They cited my aunt while on hospice for her ramp they needed for her wheelchair. My aunt had to go to court while on hospice due to harassment. Also, when me and my husband were having work done to our backyard and needed permits, it was a nightmare. Finally, I made my husband call and resubmit permits and use only his name and the address of our property. And that is when they finally pushed through our permits. I had not changed my name at the time. Talk about small-town drama. This mayor is still current mayor. Constantly, we see her breaking rules and she continues to create conflicts of interest for herself. Were we the assholes in this situation? Should we just forget it and move on? Do we have the right to be mad still? Hello, my friends and I had been talking about Karens after watching the Karen movie. We had rented it because our parents aren't relatively comfortable with us going to movie theaters with the pandemic. A friend of mine, who I knew since first grade, reminded me of the children destroyer Karen, the woman we never hoped to see again. A friend of mine watching was intrigued. Granted, she moved in the state after the Karen was gone when we were in 7th grade. I told her about it, and now I'm telling you. The 6th grade school year had begun for me. A few months later, a woman moved in with her 2 entitled kids in my grade, entitled daughter ED, and entitled son EEE, and entitled son. With the signature Karen haircut, I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought she was just a normal woman. What I thought changed when the school year began. I walked to school with my amazing cousin, A-Key in 8th grade at the time, We lived on the same block. You'll soon find out why she's so amazing later. Whilst crossing the street, we hear a horn. We look over and beside us, we see Karen blasting her car's horn, yelling at the couple of kids crossing the street, including us. Amazing cousin. Isn't that Karen? Me. Yeah? Amazing cousin soon noticed something in Karen's car. A tall, halfway empty bottle of vodka. She knew because that was one of her mother's favorite drinks. She instantly started to run across the street now, hurrying me just in case Karen was drunk. Me. What's going on? Amazing cousin. Karen has a large bottle of vodka in her passenger seat. I want to make sure you're safe. I don't care for those kids. They cause enough trouble. She was talking about Ed and Eve. She lived next to them, so she knew most of what they were really like. She and her parents didn't tell me because they didn't want to get me, as young as I was at the time, in a situation like that. Damn, I knew she was a Korean. That was the first time I heard the name Karen be used to describe a group of people. Anyways, unlucky me AD was in the same homeroom as me. She was a total bully. Regarding the male classes, S was as bad as her, maybe even worse as he tended to throw paper balls at teachers and students. In my middle school, there were female and male homerooms, including one that's mixed. I had become a huge target of their bullying and came down with self-esteem issues and depression at a young age. I blame myself, as they had targeted me due to my symptoms of ADHD, my shuddering, and even the issues resulting from their bullying. I hadn't told Amazing Cousin or anyone for that matter about it, but she ended up finding anyways. I was walking with my books when ES pushed me, making me drop my stuff. Amazing Cousin saw her from the corner of her eye and marched towards me. I was on the floor crying as I couldn't take it anymore. She patted my shoulder and gave me a hug, then got up and walked after ES and AD, grabbing them by the collar and dragging them toward the office. There were cameras they didn't notice in the hall when they pushed me. After seeing the footage and making sure Amazing Cousin didn't hurt those brats, they had gotten a punishment that was equivalent to a slap on the wrist, a 30-minute detention. While Amazing Cousin had gotten a 2-day suspension because ES and AD claimed she had hurt them on the way there. As they were the good kids near the teachers, sadly the bullying continued and had gotten worse. One day in the 6th grade, teachers had a meeting. These meetings were for a whole week, so there were a bunch of substitutes. They treated the substitutes with no respect. This brought their reputations with the whole school staff down. They were no longer believed and monitored, which they ended up getting suspended multiple times. That's when Karen full Koreanness set sail. She started to deliberately harass children and seemed to be looking for me. I walked with Amazing Cousin that Karen would just stick up her middle finger when Amazing Cousin wasn't looking, and I held back tears. One day we were very early and with a horrible coincidence, Karen and her brats were too. Amazing Cousin had gotten thirsty, so she went to a park which was popular and near the middle school. It had water fountains with clean water. She told me to stay there. So I sat down, and then I hear the signature. Excuse me. I looked up into my horror. Karen, ED, and ES were there. Karen, I hear that you and your cousin have been causing my children some trouble. I'll get your parents and that cousin of yours arrested and you'll have no one. It was something like that. Karen continued to berate me when Amazing Cousin came by right behind her and her children. Amazing Cousin was tall, about 5'10" at that age, while Karen was about 5'2", and her brats seemed to have gotten their height from their father as they were a bit taller than their mother. Amazing Cousin, hey. Karen and her brats looked at Amazing Cousin, to their horror. She was back and she looked pissed as what had been happening to me caused her to have an extremely low patience for Karens. Amazing Cousin, you see, Karen, this is why your husband left you. He was probably tired of your nonsense. How are you going to berate a child and encourage your kids to help you along? That's why they've been getting in trouble. You're such a Karen and nothing will ever help that. Karen had started to talk back, but suddenly Amazing Cousin had gotten closer, cracking her knuckles, and she ran off, dragging her children behind her. Over the next few months, Karen's demon spawns left me alone. As far as I knew, they had found new targets. One of the targets wasn't having it. They had told their parents. One day, as me and Amazing Cousin were walking, we saw a woman about the same height as Karen and one of the targets walking up to the car window. They had started an argument, and Karen ended up punching the kid, breaking his nose. Police had been nearby and they saw the whole debacle. Karen was arrested and the woman had requested press charges. I, a mixed-race 21-year-old female, was adopted when I was a year old. I was adopted with my little brother to a white family with 5 other kids. They first just wanted to foster us, but fell in love and adopted us. Here's the crazy backstory. The state I lived in was given a grant for all the non-white babies they placed in homes. So a lot of non-white babies were adopted fast. I was born in 1999. My birth mother had her other kids taken away from her, so she left the state before the social worker got to the hospital. Since I was born with drugs in my system, I had withdrawals and had seizures but was never taken to the hospital out of fear. My birth mom got high and went into labor with my brother while visiting her dad. So we were back in the state she ran from. When my brother was born, the head nurse called Keep. They got to the hospital fast after they learned their lesson the first time. My birth mom never saw my little brother. I was a year old in the recovery room with my birth parents, and the worker came in to tell her they were taking my brother. Seeing me, they asked who I was. She at first said I was her niece till my birth dad, not getting what she was doing, told the truth. They took me too, and she never came to court dates. They took us on Thursday, and my now family got us on Friday. We joked that we were to buy one, get one free since when they adopted us. The state gave them a discount for keeping us together. She went on to have 2 more kids, and one was taken, and she got clean raising her last one. When I was 18, I found her on Facebook, and we met. I occasionally visit her. She's a little bit much for me. When I told my parents her side of the story about how bad she wanted us, they showed me the files that proved otherwise. She even had another couple set up to pay her $9,000 for my little brother, and my parents had to go to court to keep my brother with their couple. What kind of person sells their baby? Well, I had a baby in December. I'm half black and half Caucasian. My husband is completely Caucasian, so our son came out fair-skinned. My birth mom is fair-skinned and my birth dad is very dark, though I'm what they call light-skinned black. My birth mom started calling my son her baby, telling everyone he looks like her and not me. She told me, if someone asks whose baby he is if we are out in public, I'm going to tell them mine because that's more believable. He was born on the 10th of December, so because of COVID, we were only letting close family who had their date shot, flu shots, and quarantined for a week without symptoms to see the baby in person. It was Christmas Eve, which happens to be my husband's grandpa's birthday. We absolutely adore each other. He tells my husband's cousin, I'm the favorite grandkid. They had done everything we asked, and he wanted to see the baby for his birthday. The day before my birth mom asked if she could come visit the baby. I tried to explain it was only immediate family and all the requirements. She didn't care and showed up to our apartment while we were gone. My mom called me saying she showed up to her house crying, saying we were keeping her baby from her. We felt bad and let her see him. The whole time saying her baby. She then told me that my dad's birthday was coming. I was confused because my dad's birthday is in May. She meant my birth dad and was furious when I was confused. I explained to her that since they didn't raise me or help at all, that I didn't see her as my parents. I told her I was grateful for her and sympathized with her, but she had to understand where I was coming from. She stood up with my baby to leave. My husband tried to take the baby back, but she kept saying grandparents have rights. She wouldn't sit down and I couldn't help much since I had a rough C-section, so I called the police. When the police came, we explained the situation and she claimed grandparent rights again. The officer explained to us that it was a real thing and she would have to go to court though. He gave us our son back. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. Backstory. I am self-employed and run 2 businesses. So I bought myself an almost brand new BMW G31 530D. It was only 6 months old and only ran 6.0 chem so far. I run a used car sales shop for German vehicles besides my other business, and since my father was a passionate BMW driver, it was clear to me to follow his footsteps on behalf of cars. Back to the story. One day, I was on my way home from work at around 6 p.m. and I got hungry. I had about 150 chem left to drive and I didn't want to eat dinner this late. I decided to stop by at one of the gas stations located directly at the Autobahn, motorway for UKI, highway for US. So I found a fast food restaurant, got to the drive, encounter and ordered my dinner. Nothing special so far. At this point, in Germany, it wasn't allowed for fast food places to host any guests inside past 6 p.m. So I parked my car, opened the back door, and sat down in the trunk to enjoy my fast food dinner. Shortly after I sat down, an old minivan pulled over to stop next to me. A woman opened the door and looked at me in disgrace. I didn't think much of it and continued to eat. Suddenly, she came directly to me and said, "Excuse me, what are you doing here?" "Hello there. I'm just eating dinner here. Nothing special." "Where is the owner of the car?" That would be me. Why? Is something wrong? Don't you dare to lie to me. How can a young kid like you own something expensive like that? Besides, you don't look German at all, so you must have stolen the car. I have a slightly darker skin tone, since my mother is part Asian. Well, why? She cuts me off. I don't want to hear any more lies. "I will call the police and have you arrested if you don't hand me over the keys so I can return the car to the rightful owner." "Well, go ahead and call them." I really thought that she was joking. She actually called the police. They arrived like 20 minutes later. A policewoman and a policeman got out of their car, which ironically was the same BMW G31 model I drove, just in police colors. The policewoman came to me first and asked me if everything was fine, and she wanted an explanation of what happened here from my point of view. So when I tried to start explaining things to her, Karen came over to us, pushed herself between me and the policewoman, and shouted at me for being a liar, even though I haven't said anything yet. "Why are you being so nice to him? He stole that car. He is surely not even old enough to drive a car anyway. Don't waste your time. Arrest him and hand me over the keys. I know the owner of the car and I will return it to him right now." "Ma'am, you have to calm down. I will not arrest someone because you're telling me to. I will do my job and first ask him a few things. And then we will see what will happen. But for now, I'm asking you to step aside and go to my colleague and talk to him first." "Why should I talk to him? Why don't you just do your job? I am a citizen of this country and I pay your income." "Do what I want." "Yes, she actually said that." Don't you realize that you're currently acting very strangely and this gentleman over there is just being quiet and calm all the time? Behave yourself or you will face some serious problems. After that, Karen went with the policeman, and I got asked by the policewoman again about what happened. I explained to her that Karen thought I had stolen the car and that I don't even have a license, and she even acted a bit racist against me. The policewoman was very friendly and asked for my documents such as ID, driving license, and my paperwork for the car. After I handed her everything, she went to the police car and checked everything. In the meanwhile, I just waited and played a bit on my phone. A couple of minutes later, she came back and said everything was fine and asked me if I wanted to press charges against Karen for being racist. I declined since I really just wanted to eat dinner and drive home. Her colleague came over to me and they talked about the whole situation. It was very clear that the woman made false accusations against me, and they told me I could leave if I want since there was nothing wrong here with me. When I went to the back door of my car to close it, Karen came to me again and tried to reach into my pockets and shouted, "Where are the keys?" "You don't deserve this car. I will take it from you now, you foreign jerk." Just go and steal another car and fool police again? I really couldn't believe that someone would be that stupid to do something like that. The police quickly handcuffed her and put her into their car. I was asked if everything was fine and if I'm sure that I don't want to press charges against her. This time, I said I do want to press charges because I considered this last action as a personal attack. Afterwards, I drove home and hoped that she would get what she deserves, or at least get sent into psychiatry. Many years ago, in a nearby neighborhood, I cherished my bicycle as a means of transportation, especially since I was a single mother without a car. Though it wasn't anything extraordinary, it served its purpose of taking me around town. Due to the abundance of entitled drivers, I preferred riding on sidewalks rather than dealing with the chaotic traffic. One day, as I approached a corner, I noticed a car approaching the stop sign on the side street. Assuming the driver would stop as required, I began riding my bike off the curb and into the street. However, to my surprise, he didn't stop, and before I knew it, we collided. After struggling to free myself from the entangled mess of my bike and the car, I quickly checked myself for injuries. Thankfully, I only had a bruised knee, so I considered myself fortunate. The driver emerged from his car and immediately started yelling at me for being in his way without even asking if I was all right. In response, I raised my voice, blaming him for running the stop sign. A concerned passerby approached, checked on my well-being, and dialed the police. While waiting on the safety of the sidewalk with the helpful stranger, the driver moved his car about 5-6 feet forward, dragging my bike along. I believe he realized he was at fault and attempted to manipulate the accident scene to make it appear as if he had already turned the corner. Consequently, when the police arrived, that's precisely what he told them. He had stopped, continued around the corner, and I recklessly darted into his path. The police officer listened to the driver's account and then turned to me, requesting my version of the events. Sensing skepticism in his eyes, I asked the officer to ask the driver to back his car up slightly so I could accurately demonstrate where both of us were at the time of the accident. The officer seemed intrigued by my certainty. Once the driver complied and moved his car, I pointed out the tire marks on the street left by my bike when I was struck. Justice prevailed as the driver received a ticket and I obtained his contact information. I sent numerous letters to the driver, politely requesting him to replace my bike, but he chose to ignore them all. Frustrated by his indifference, I eventually resorted to taking him to small claims court to seek compensation for my flattened bike. Unfortunately, he failed to appear in court. The judge meticulously reviewed all the evidence I presented and ruled in my favor, awarding me the cost of a new bike as well as compensation for the pain and suffering caused by my bruised knee. Despite the court's diligent effort to serve him the papers, he continued to ignore his legal obligations. I grew increasingly exasperated. No money, no bike. Then came a turning point. By chance, I stumbled upon a second-hand bike and began riding around once more. Out of curiosity, I pedaled past the driver's house and was surprised to spot a for sale sign on his lawn. Was he trying to escape and evade paying me? Motivated by this discovery, I returned home and gathered all the documentation related to the court judgment. Determined, I headed straight to the courthouse and filed a lien against his house, seeking the full amount of the judgment. Subsequently, I took the initiative to contact his realtor, informing her of the judgment and the lien I had placed. Sensing the urgency, the realtor promptly reached out to the driver. Finally, after approximately 6 months since the accident, he made contact with me. However, rather than making amends, he resorted to threatening me over the phone, claiming he had witnesses who could prove my account of the accident was incorrect. I calmly reminded him that the appropriate time to bring forth witnesses was during the court hearing, which he had deliberately missed. Undeterred, he insisted that I remove the lien from his house. I staunchly refused, clarifying that the lien would only be lifted once he fulfilled his financial obligation to me. Frustrated and enraged, he muttered a few choice words before abruptly hanging up. 2 months later, I received an unexpected call from the realtor, expressing a desire to stop by and deliver a check. With cautious optimism, I signed the lien release and accepted a cashier's check. Thanks to this unexpected turn of events, my children and I had a joyous and memorable Christmas. So this happened last October in 2020, and I feel it's finally safe to share it. Given the situation at that time, going to campus was a no-go, so everything was online. As such, a lot of programs used for coursework, which were only on PC, needed a remote link for those of us on Macs or other devices. This link connects students to assigned desktops physically on campus through an application like Citrix. It would only allow students onto the desktops when another class was not remotely using that lab at the time, and at night when registered classes were done. The on-campus computers would show that their drives were in use, so the students who lived on campus would know that someone was remotely accessing it. Well, I was taking a course in remote sensing, which required access to programs such as ArcMap, ArcGIS, R, and Ertis. They were only available on PC, so I, as a MacBook user, needed to use the remote link. The issue started at the start of October, when I was working on an assignment in ArcMap. I was really startled when I was suddenly kicked out, and then furious, because I hadn't had the chance to save my latest input. I then went back to the web page, re-input my student credentials, and logged into a different desktop. Not 2 minutes later was I logged out again. Rightly peeved, I emailed the professor and task about it and moved on to other homework. I figured it was a bug that would soon be fixed. No. It continued throughout the entire month. I ended up having to work on my remote labs between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m., as I literally was not able to work during the day without being kicked off. It was really annoying, especially since I couldn't even work during my assigned lab time. Other students started reporting this, and we get a lot of emails from it. Updates, patches, and things like that we had to install to try and patch this bug. And nothing worked. It was painful. I decided that enough was enough and took a train to campus after my online morning classes. If it was going to keep booting me off the remote, then I would just go in person. I completed the online health check, got to campus no problem, and made my way to the building that housed all the PCs. Yes, we have a building that houses all the PCs for computer classes. Anyways, I went up and towards the lab that my credentials were registered to. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't expecting what I saw. But I sure was pissed. Through the windows into the lab, I saw two guys going from PC to PC, logging students off. At first, I couldn't believe it, and then I got furious. They were laughing about screwing with hard-working students. I will call them dumb and dumber. That's why I decided to get some payback. I pulled out my phone and placed it beside the window, and it was partially hidden by the trash bin inside the classroom, recording them and what they were doing. They didn't notice me, thank God, and I got onto my laptop, remote linking to my phone. I then got onto the university social media page and started to live stream the video from my phone. I put a title along the lines of "Finally found the bugs kicking students off remote desktop. Video has been deleted, and I will explain soon." It didn't take long for fellow students to take notice of it, and it went viral within 30 minutes. Names were soon put out as Dumb and Dumber were recognized, and there was a lot of hate in the comments. Even campus police replied asking for the location. I was all too happy to give it. It was then I saw in the stream that Dumb pulled out his phone, and he started freaking out. He had noticed the stream and that it was live. I quickly rushed to grab my phone and retreat, and that's when Dumber rushed out the door and tackled me. We started brawling. It was self-defense as he kept attacking me to grab my phone, and then I saw Dumb going for my laptop, which was hosting the stream, which was still being recorded from my phone. So, I kicked Dumber between the legs while elbowing him in neck before jumping Dumb. To be honest, I don't really know what happened next, but I do remember campus police having to pull me off Dumb. Apparently, I had tackled him away from my laptop and he punched me in the face, with me apparently grabbing his carry-on bag, bashing him over the head with it, accidentally cracking his laptop. Oops. So, anyways, the fight was broken up and we were all taken down to the campus police office. To make a very long story short, I got a relative slap on the wrist for my part of it. Had to do some on campus community service, but my record was kept clean. Thankfully, I was not charged for the fight or the laptop, as I was able to prove self-defense, and that the hit me first tried to destroy my property intentionally, which made it worse for them. I was let off on the laptop for a technicality, as I was punched in the face and had no idea that he even had a laptop in his carry-on. Phew. As for Dumb and Dumber, I was called in to testify at each of their hearings in December. Turns out kicking students off remote links was considered a very grave academic offense, as it was intentional tampering with others' work. The video stream I took was a big part of the evidence against them, and CCTV proved that they had been doing it for weeks. In almost all the computer labs, they had intentionally messed with over 100 students.
Adding to attacking me, they got into pretty hot water.
Now, the reason this wasn't discovered sooner was due to the fact that this remote link was new to us, and it was still working through the bug. I don't know exactly what happened next, as they just needed me to come in, masked, and tell what I did and remember. However, I did get notification in my email in March this past year that 2 students were expelled for intentional tampering of other students' work. Can you guess who? Yup, Dumb and Dumber got the boot for their dumb actions. It gets even better, though. Turns out they were here on student visas, which meant that not only were they expelled from the university with a black mark on their records, they were also given the boot from the country, and most definitely back to their very disappointed parents. Maybe it's karma, but they got publicly exposed on a live stream for their actions for all the school to see, which was taken down due to it needing to be evidence against them and all. But, yep, they were expelled twice for their dumb actions, and with their names in campus infamy for their stunt. Hope they've learned their lesson. Edit. Wanted to add that they were actually put on a cargo flight home, as their country wasn't allowing passenger flight. They had to go because without their visas, they were in the country illegally, which would land them in even deeper hot water. The university actually took mercy on them and paid for the flight, and I agree. They may have acted stupid, but that's no reason to have to deal with border security or whatnot. I only know this because I ran into, and was able to talk with, one of the campus officers who told me what happened when I went in, person for a lab this recent September. So, yeah, those guys had to take a cargo flight home. I think the uncomfortable experience they would have had was enough of a punishment compared to being in lockup until their country's borders opened or until other arrangements could be made. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.